Okay, I think we can pause there. If you didn't understand what just happened there, well, you're probably normal, but... Hyperdemon is a 2022 shooter from Sorath. They made Devil Daggers. Devil Daggers is cool too, and you can play that. But for me to really dive into Hyperdemon and explain to you why I think it's so great, I need to talk about some shooter history first. So let's do a quick history lesson. Shooters. They started when Wolfenstein came out, I guess. Wolfenstein 3D, Doom, it was kind of knocking it out of the park initially. I want to say everything up to the original Half-Life, it was kind of like... Everything was moving super fast, everything was going absolutely nuts. The gameplay of shooters was the shooting. And it didn't matter how realistic the environments are, you know. A game like Wolfenstein is just a bunch of concrete halls, where a game like Half-Life is these big, sprawling laboratory environments. But the gameplay was still the same. You move fast as fuck, you shoot a lot, you carry a lot of guns on you. You were supposed to feel absolutely insanely badass. There was always a tool for the job, and you knew how to use it, and it was point and click, but not in the video, not in the genre sense, because that's wrong. As shooters started to move away from the PC and onto console, though, we had to figure out a way to get all these guns into this tiny little console. So what happens? Halo happens. And the model becomes standard that, instead of cycling through 50 weapons to find the right one, let's just have it so that you can carry 2 at a time, and we'll go from there. Halo also introduced this regenerating health thing, which it didn't pioneer, but man did it ever popularize it, and man did it ever bring gameplay to a halt. So for your health to regenerate, you need to take cover. And taking cover means not shooting. And it also means hiding. And it also means not doing anything that made first-person shooters engaging in the first place. It was great for realism and immersion, but it wasn't really great for gameplay. Fast forward a few more years, and we've got, like, cinematic shooters coming out. You got your games like Uncharted, you got Gears of War, you got, hell, Resident Evil was even getting plagued by it. I appreciate the cinematic approach to games in a certain respect, because when you want to tell a big narrative story, opting for more cinematics is a great way to go about it. I think that Halo did it tastefully enough. It only breaks up the combat with cutscene shit when you're actually at the end of a level. But for a lot of games, this meant like slamming the brakes on gameplay in order to show a cutscene or do some sort of narrative bullshit. And shooting was no longer the focus of your shooter game. Narrative was the focus. And so leave it to id to come back into the arena some decades later and say, hey, let me show you how to do this. Wolfenstein The New Order, Doom 2016. Wolfenstein was a little bit heavier on the story. I'm actually kind of shocked with how much story and cutscenes shit there is in this game. The game doesn't take itself super seriously, and it's good for it. Doom 2016 went even farther by saying, screw the story, we're focusing on the big guns and the arena shooties. And the focus was coming back to, why do people like shooters? It's not the narrative, it's not the context, hell, it's hardly even the arena itself, it's the shooting. Now obviously this model of putting the shooting first and narrative second isn't super lucrative. I'm not gonna sit here and act like Doom Eternal outsold The Last of Us 2, mainly because it didn't. But for the sake of purity and at the risk of sounding like an elitist, I think it works better. I think it's more fun, it's more engaging, and at least to someone with ADHD, it's a hell of a lot more enjoyable. And Doom 2016, I think, was a really focal point in shooters because... And Doom 2016 was a really focal point for shooters for 2 reasons. Because 1, a lot of people realized, hey, going back to the basics of just shoot and kill is a lot of fun actually when you really refine that singular process. And 2, a lot of people realized they wanted to make games like that because stripping back to those essentials means you only really need to build off those essentials. Indie boomer shooters or arena shooters, whatever you want to call them, they're everywhere now. They're on Steam, they've been blossoming left, right, and center, and while a lot of them are really great, I don't think there is one that speaks to more people than Ultra Kill. You may have heard of it. It's only the highest rated product on Steam, not a big flex for them. Ultra Kill is, insane. It's not the topic of today's video, but it's a game that definitely earns its high rating. I think what Ultra Kill does is it looks at a game like Doom 2016, looks at those arena combat segments where you're really into it and you're hardly even thinking about what you're shooting. You're just locking onto targets, picking the optimal weapon, blasting, and doing it over and over again, solving these rapid fire puzzles of what gun do I need to do what thing. Ultra Kill says, okay, there was peaks in those gameplay. Let's take those peaks and make those our baseline. Everything else we need to surpass. Ultra Kill is an absolute sensory overload, and it is incredible. Again, not the topic of today's video, but I think it showed people, at least in the indie game sphere, that we can go beyond what Doom was presenting. We can go beyond that base model, and it's when you push beyond that base model and you don't put personality into your narrative, but put personality into your gameplay, that you end up with something truly phenomenal. Because again, I love a good deal of games that are focused on cinematics and narrative, but when you take a game and say, I want to make a shooter, and then the actual shooting gameplay is bland, boring bullshit, and all of the personality resides in your narrative, then you haven't made a good shooter. You've made a good narrative with shooting in between the plot beats. So now that brings me to Hyperdemon, because in a lot of ways, Hyperdemon is exactly where I want shooters to be going right now. Hyperdemon has so much personality without an inkling of story going on, and I know that that's a huge turnoff for a lot of people. Well, you know, how am I supposed to be invested in this if I don't know what's actually going on in this world? And that's fair, I get it. Again, these games don't sell as well as these high-budget narrative things for a very good reason. That being said, I think this experience is so unique that it's exactly why I'm so invested in it. Hyperdemon is the sequel to 2016's Devil Daggers. It is a simple arena shooter where you have a goal of survive. That's it. So the thing is, your score isn't just measured on how long you survive, though. It's measured on how much time you have left when you die. So you get more time by collecting these red crystals from enemies. The only way to accumulate time is to eliminate enemies without that time running out. So what that means is, the point of this game isn't just to live as long as you can, like something like Call of Duty's zombie mode. It's to do it as efficiently as possible to climb that leaderboard. I guess it's also worth mentioning that you have 1 health, 1 HP. You can take 1 damage. You also don't have a gun as much as you have this magic hand that can summon either a rapid stream of daggers or a huge pulse, like a shotgun blast. So we've combined both of our weapons into a single function. There's a lot of movement abilities that I just can't go over right now, and all of this takes place in this hyperbolic, prismatic sphere that has the aesthetic of a 2010s EDM trap release on SoundCloud. You get to the point where instead of the game just flashing a little like red blinker on the side of your screen to be like, hey, look over here, there's an enemy, it's like there's these there will be hallucinations of like what's behind you or what's in your peripheral. The game really tries to sell itself on the idea that you are fighting inside of a sphere. It's like this hellish gold chrome snow globe. But oh my god, is it ever kinetic, and the variety of enemies isn't overwhelming. It's just enough to drive you crazy because you'll accidentally shoot the one guy that you're not supposed to shoot. There's a lot of good variety with the simple mechanics that you're able to use, like you can shoot an enemy, instead of absorbing the red crystal to give you more time, you can take it and turn it into a laser and then shoot the big crystal, and that releases a bunch of homing missiles. It gives you a bunch of abilities without ever having to like switch through weapons. It's all just available to you immediately. It would already be great if it was just the gameplay here, right? With the rapid movement and all of the weapons that you need combined into one, and it's all just up to you to memorize what can happen when and where and when to do it. But the visual identity of the game and the sound design take it so much further. It makes it this almost transcendental arcade experience. It's the kind of thing that you play and you have to turn your brain off while you're playing it. So you absorb what's going on, but not at a surface level. It's so subconscious. You're just taking in info and responding immediately with the best of your abilities. It's fast-paced. It is furiously well designed. I think it's one of the better shooters that I've played this year. I kind of dislike the leaderboard function, how it just has to pop up right away, because just as I'm getting immersed in the amazing visuals and gameplay loop, I die, and then it's immediately like, hey, you failed to be better. I also think the tutorial could have been done in some other way besides just like a series of YouTube playbacks followed by an example. It's fine, it's functional, but we'll talk about the tutorials of games in another video in the future. Either way, Hyperdemon is absolute insanity. I think it is one of the most visceral shooter experiences that has come out this year. I highly recommend you give it a try. It's $15 on Steam, and go support Sorath and their other game, Devil Daggers, if you like this one, even though I think that Hyperdemon is just this really cool experimental elevation of what it means to be a basic arena shooter. If this is what the simplest we can have is, then I think we're moving in a great direction for artistic direction in games.